Before we get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Charlie Merriman. A lot of information in this video about Gio's perspective and grind to become the world champion was gone from his podcast. And another shout out to Play Pokemon's champion chat with Gio, as that gave me good information on Gio's routine, strategy, and preparation going to the biggest match of his life. Link to both of these videos will be in the description. Meet Giovanni Siske, longtime respected and admired Pokemon player who's qualified for Worlds multiple times and has several strong tournament runs, who like many before him and many after him have the same goal, to become the world champion, and like the vast majority of Pokemon competitors, he has not become the world champion. In fact, he is still fighting for his first major win, period. I want to make this clear by saying this is no way trying to be disrespectful or am I trying to diminish Gio's skill. Winning any, and I mean any Pokemon event is insanely difficult. You're in a field of sometimes over 1,000 other competitors, and everything you have to do has to be right. The mons, the items, the EVs, terror types, movesets, natures. All of this has to be right for your team just to have a fighting chance. Then in the actual battles, you have to think about leads, be able to predict your opponent's moves, know damage rolls, know when to terra, and you have to do this for somewhere between 2 to 3 games for every match. It's exhausting both physically and mentally. And of course, there are tons of things you do not have control over. Things like crits, flinches, misses, secondary effects, who you get randomly assigned as your opponent, all while the rule set changes multiple times a year, so you are often launched back to square one in all of your preparation. It is a cruel game, to put it bluntly. It is more than likely that really skilled players could go their entire competitive Pokemon career without winning one event, and there is no shame in that. But for Gio, in a few months he will not have the same fate as a lot of these players. This is a story of a once overlooked player with once overlooked mons who kept at it with the love and support from the people close to him who would shine brightest on the biggest stage. This is how Giovanni Siske became the 2025 Pokemon VGC World Champion. Before competing in the World Championships, let alone winning Worlds, first you need to actually qualify. In previous years, you would do this by entering locals, major events, and grand challenges, and depending how well you did, you would get points based off your performance. And once you meet a certain threshold for points, which for Gio's case would be at least 500 points, it would be granted an invite to the Pokemon World Championship. This year, it works a little differently. The getting points process is still the same, but instead of getting a certain amount of points that are predetermined, this year, Gio needs to be in the top 75 point earners in the America/Canada region. But if he ever manages to either win a regional or national event, or finish in the top 4 in an international level event, he also qualifies automatically for Worlds as well. This overall is way more difficult compared to previous years. To give you some perspective, in 2024, 864 players were able to qualify for the World Championship. But compared to that in 2025, what we'll see later, only 432 players will qualify for Worlds. Worlds takes place in August of every year, so the first tournaments that will count towards Worlds 2025 will be held in September of 2024. So what does the hero of our story do when the new season starts? Does he start entering the first event available to start chasing those more important than ever championship points? Well, no actually. In fact, he doesn't enter a major tournament until January, 4 months after the new season has already started. Remember that these major events are all in person, located all throughout not just the US, but the entire world. These tournaments are all multiple day commitments where you have to pay for your own flight, hotel, entry fee, and probably have to take off of work or school to do so. Almost nobody has the luxury to do that more than a few times a year. But no matter the reason, he needs to make his first run at San Antonio Regionals count.
Good morning, Pokemon trainers. We are here in sunny San Antonio, Texas for Championship Sunday of the San Antonio Regional Championship.
Partway through day 2, Gio's at a strong position with 8 wins and only 1 loss. If Gio wins one of his next 2 matches, Gio will secure himself a spot in the top cut where he has a chance to win the whole event and win his qualification right then and there, or at the very least, rack up a lot of championship points and some cash to go with it. But just as quickly as things can look great, things can spiral the other way around. Gio loses his next 2 matches, and he is out of the tournament. He places 26 and gets 125 points for his trouble. Overall, a very respectable showing, but after falling behind by not entering tournaments for 4 months and falling short at this event after such a promising start, Gio thinks he's finished, that this was his one shot for qualifying for Worlds this year and it's gone. But his friend Isabel Lee thinks differently, and suggested him to enter Vancouver Regionals. And after looking at his school schedule and seeing how that lines up for Vancouver, Hugh realizes that this falls during his spring break. So he flies to Seattle to meet with Isabel, and Isabel would drive him from Seattle to Vancouver, which, just in case you didn't know, is all the way up in Canada. It is time for Gio to try to redeem himself.
Good morning, Pokemon fans, and welcome to our coverage of the Vancouver Regional Championships here in beautiful Canada.
After surviving day 1 with a 6-2 record and seeing all of his friends be put on stream, Gio wants to join in on the spotlight, especially because after 7 years of competing, he has never been on stream. After winning his first match of day 2, he finally gets a chance to be on stream for the first time. And what makes this even bigger is that this match Gio is playing is to make it a top cut, winning his first stream match ever to redeem himself from his last tournament falter at this exact step would feel so sweet. He wins in a dramatic 2-game fashion, where his Ogerpon cornerstone lives in Astral Barrage at 1 point of HP. And a couple sets later, Gio is put on stream for the second time today. Once again, before today, he has never been on stream after 7 years. He loses this time in top 8 to the eventual winner of the tournament. This top 8 finish gives him 280 points. He is more than back in the race with a performance like that. There is another reason that I have not yet brought up on why people generally do not attend every single event even if they are able to. The reason is that the point system makes it not really worth doing. The reason is that only the top 5 finishes at large events are what gives you points. Yes, going to more events gives you more chances for a good 5 finishes. But if you go to every single event, you're going to stretch yourself so thin that your performance is going to suffer at some point.
I'm tired.
You can scrape some more points than locals because those do not count towards the top 5 big events. But don't expect to qualify for Worlds on locals alone. If only there is a way to get a good amount of points without counting towards your 5 major total. Well, in fact, there is one type of event that fits these qualifications, and better yet, this method doesn't make you leave your house. They are called Grand Challenges. Each year there are 4 of them, but they might be the most cool tournaments that you could play. Since you don't have to travel to enter the event, you see by far the most amount of players. Other Pokemon tournaments are run in best of 3 sets, which means you have to win 2 games to win your set. Each match of the Grand Challenge is best of 1. Other tournaments have open team sheets, which means you can see your opponent's moves, items, terror types, and abilities. In the Grand Challenge, all you know are the 6 Pokemon your opponent has. This is a format where each game you are playing psychological warfare against yourself and your opponent, trying to predict the unpredictable. And if you get caught off guard for that one game, sorry bozo, hold this L and you do not get your chance to adjust for Game 2 because there is no Game 2. It is a 3-day event, where up to 45 games can be played, where each win increases your rating and each loss decreases it. In Grand Challenge 3, Gio gets 24th for a solid 120 points. In the following Grand Challenge, he gets 20th place, which gets him another 120 points. That's basically Gio going 8-3 in San Antonio Regionals 2 more times without him having to leave the house. Talk about taking advantage of a golden opportunity.
Welcome everybody to the 2025 Pokemon Regional Championships. We are here in Atlanta where over 700 players, almost 800 players are currently vying for the title of Masters Division Regional Champ.
Gio's next event is Atlanta Regionals, the last tournament of the Regulation G format. Gio has been ranging from solid to great finishes in every event in this regulation so far. If Gio could have one more strong performance, then he might be close to locking up that World's invite. He's currently already in the top 50, but Gio misses day 2 entirely as well as almost all of his friends, an absolute disaster for him and his friends, getting him only 80 points. But there is no time to feel sorry for yourself, especially since a whole new format is around the corner. And this format is even more important because this is going to be the same format that is used for the World Championship. This is the format you truly have to master. In this format you are allowed 2 restricted Pokemon instead of 1, which are super overpowered legendaries that are normally banned. The power level is even higher than before. Any wrong choice in the restricted pair you choose, or any of the support Pokemon, and you will get run over by your opponent's broken legendaries. Gio in their single restricted format was using Koraidon, which was not a popular choice at all. But why is it so unpopular? Its brother Miraidon is winning tournaments left and right, and won the previous World Championship. And when you look at them side by side at first glance, it makes no sense that the results are so different. Their stats are the same, except their attack and special attack are switched. They are both part dragon type. Both have abilities that set up field conditions that make them and their potential partners even more powerful, and they both have signature moves that are 100 power, 100 accuracy moves with no downside. Why is Miraidon everywhere and Koraidon's getting outplaced by the other Sunsetter Groudon, who had to experience over 20 years of power creep? Well, the first difference is the difference in those stats. Being a special attacker means Miraidon does not have to deal with Pesky Incineroar switching in and cutting your damage output by 33%. Koraidon does not have that luxury. Just one Intimidate is enough to prevent crucial KOs. The second difference being their typing. More importantly, they are typing in relationship to their respective abilities. Miraidon being electric type means that electric terrain boosted moves are getting the benefit of Miraidon's stab. Koraidon is not a fire type, which means its sun boosted moves are not getting the benefits of stab. If you do not tear your Koraidon to a fire type, your fire type moves are missing out on a whopping 50% of your power. The increased need to tear a Koraidon makes the team less flexible, but arguably the biggest knock on Koraidon compared to Miraidon is the lack of good pivot move. Miraidon can use a stab boosted electric terrain boosted volt switch with a choice specs, probably one shot whatever it hits, go back to safety, and be able to choose the next specs move the next time it comes out. Koraidon's best pivot move is the bug type move U-turn, a move that is not boosted by stab or the sun, and to add insult to injury, it's the worst offensive typing in the game. To give an example of how much weaker a U-turn is compared to a volt switch, let's say Miraidon and Koraidon are both trained to be max firepower. A Koraidon U-turn is doing 95% less damage compared to the Miraidon volt switch, and God forbid the Koraidon gets intimidated while U-turns. That would make the Koraidon U-turn do nearly 3 times less damage than the volt switch. And to make things even worse, one of the most popular support Pokemon in the format just happens to be Pelipper, a mon that turns off your boost and makes your fire attacks weaker. This raises the question, why would anyone even try to use Koraidon over Miraidon? There are a few reasons. A small reason is, just like how Pelipper is a popular mon that turns off your sun, there are multiple Pokemon that can turn off Miraidon's electric terrain. Rillaboom and Indeedee. Not having to worry about that for Koraidon is always a positive. But the two biggest reasons to run Koraidon over Miraidon is that Koraidon can be used more as a sweeper. Koraidon gets Flame Charge, a 50 power fire type move raises the user's speed. Despite its low power, the combination of Koraidon's high attack, Terra Fire to get stat boost, or Calcum Pulse giving another attack increase, and the Sun boosting any fire type attack, a simple Flame Charge can one-shot a lot of mons that do not resist the move. And once you land one Flame Charge, almost nothing outspeeds you. You no longer have to worry about speed ties from a plethora of other 135 base speed Pokemon like Champao, Fluttermane, and the elected brother Miraidon. You now outspeed mons like Zacian, and most importantly, you outspeed the most commonly run restricted, Calyrex Shadow. You even outspeed popular Scarf mons like Urshifu and Chi-Yu. You even outspeed a decent amount of mons under Tailwind. A well-placed Flame Charge can win the game on the spot, but arguably the biggest reason to run Koraidon over Miraidon is the partners you get to run with them. In Scarlet and Violet, there are the past Paradox Pokemon and the future Paradox Pokemon, and all of these mons have the same ability. The future Paradox mons get Quark Drive, which boosts the user's highest stat in the electric terrain, and the past Paradox Pokemon get Photosynthesis, which boosts the user's highest stat in the sun. The difference is that the past Paradox Pokemon are generally way better than the future Paradox Pokemon. Yes, Iron Hands is one of the best Pokemon to come out of Scarlet and Violet, but besides that, you might see an occasional Iron Bundle and Iron Treads, but that's really it. For the past Paradox Pokemon, you have Fluttermane and Raging Bolt, two meta staples since the day they were allowed in tournaments, and there's also Screamtail, a not as common but still used and very annoying Pokemon to deal with. And while not a Paradox Pokemon, Chi-Yu in the sun does a disgusting amount of damage. Have fun playing against Chi-Yu and Fluttermane side by side with Beads of Ruining, dropping your special defense, the sun making Chi-Yu's fire attacks 50% stronger, and Fluttermane now outspeeds anything you can think of thanks to the photosynthesis speed boost it gets. And eventually, someone was able to unleash Koraidon's full potential in internationals, combining with Perish Trap and winning the whole event. Of course it was Wolflip. Who else would it be? And while the exact team wasn't used much afterwards, people gave Koraidon another shot with their own twist. And Koraidon went from a restricted you gave a glancing thought about while focusing on the big boys to becoming one of those said big boys. Now that's good and all that Gio has one restricted he feels comfortable with, but what's the restricted that Gio will pair with Koraidon? He meets up with her friend Ricardo, who saw Puerto Rican player Jorge get good results with Koraidon and Lunala as a restricted duo, and the other 4 Pokemon being Fluttermane, Chi-Yu, Ursaluna, and Brute Bonnet. Lunala has been a very common second restricted to add to teams. It has Wide Guard to prevent other restricted like Calyrex Shadow, Calyrex Ice, Kyogre, and Groudon from mashing their signature spread moves willy-nilly. It also adds more flexibility to these teams, to have a really bulky, threatening mon that could set up Trick Room. It gives you a plan B against teams that have faster restricteds or have speed control tools like Tailwind and Icy Wind. Lunala now does not have to win the game on its own anymore since you have another restricted that can put in the work. And what better partner to add to any Trick Room mode of a team than Ursaluna? Being one of the slowest mons in the format with a speed of 50, a ridiculous 140 attack stat, incredible bulk, and guts to boost your attack even further with the Facade with 140 base power with Stab, as well as having ground coverage for the steel types that could resist Facade. And on top of all of that, being immune to Amoonguss' Spore, one of the only mons that is slower than Ursaluna. This mon under Trick Room can win games on its own. We already talked about how powerful Chi-Yu and Fluttermane are as a pair and how they become even scarier in the sun. That just leaves one Pokemon on the team to talk about, Brute Bonnet. There was a lot of excitement, or fear, when the competitive Pokemon scene learned that Amoonguss, one of the most consistently powerful Pokemons of all time, was getting a new form. And people even got more scared when they looked at this mon's base stats. A Pokemon with the most important moves Amoonguss has, Spore and Rage Powder, with a considerable amount more bulk, real offensive stats to actually threaten to KO things. And on top of all of that, priority attack Sucker Punch to have a way to work around its poor speed. This mon looked like to be the most broken Pokemon of all time. But something weird happened. Brute Bonnet wasn't doing anything. At all. People gave up on this mon almost immediately, even in lower power level formats. This just seems wrong. Turns out going from Regenerator, a powerful reliable ability, to an ability that either does nothing or goes away after you switch it out for the first time because you're probably proccing photosynthesis with its booster energy. On top of all that defensive dark typing is really sabotaging it. In the pre-restricted metas, the difference between Grass Poison and Grass Dark meant from hard-walling all of Urshifu's attacks to getting blown up by close combat, and went from taking a Fluttermane Moonblast comfortably to being sent back to your Pokeball. It went from being invincible versus Iron Hands to becoming Drain Punch fodder for the Peed Color Hariyama. But with the introduction of the restricted solved both of Brute Bonnet's problems. The first being that Koraidon makes it so that you do not need a booster energy to get the photosynthesis boost on Brute Bonnet. So not only can you run another item to increase its reliability, but now you don't have to worry about losing the boost when you switch out. As long as that bright sun is up, Brute Bonnet will be getting that all-important stat boost. The second reason why Brute Bonnet benefits so much from the higher power level format is that the dark typing does so much better there. Things like Lunala, Calyrex Ice, and Calyrex Shadow are now some of the top dogs in meta. Brute Bonnet was a good chunk of Calyrex Shadow sets that only run Ghost and Psychic type attacks, and is threatened to get one-shot by a quad super effective Sucker Punch. Brute Bonnet has no problem eating a Moongeist Beam, even after a special attack boost from Meteor Beam, and also threatening it with a Sucker Punch. And although Brute Bonnet still doesn't love Calyrex Ice, its extra bulk can still make it live a Glacial Lance much easier, and even has a chance to live too if you invest everything in its defense and HP. Although Sucker Punch doesn't threaten to one-shot a pile of stats known as Calyrex Ice, it does respectable damage to a mon so bulky. And because Miraidon Electric Terrain prevents things like Spore, being a Spore bot like Amoonguss doesn't always cut it anymore. Brute Bonnet having real offensive stats is invaluable. This is Brute Bonnet's time to shine. That all sounds good in theory, but how does this team perform when there are actual stakes? Lucky for Gio, he gets to test his new team at Milwaukee Regionals.
Good morning, Pokemon trainers, and welcome to the penultimate regional championships here in North America. We are in Milwaukee.
Gio has a great day 1, and on day 2, he secured himself at least a finish on the top cut. The top 7 players get a bye. Unfortunately, Gio's tiebreakers only give him 9th place, which means he has to play another set to get in the top 16. He ends up losing that set, getting himself 17th place, and earning himself a number of points we have heard already, 125. Gio hasn't been able to capture a guaranteed Worlds invite with a regional win or an Nationals top 4, but his consistency keeps him putting ahead of the curve. How does Gio feel about this team after his first big event? Gio felt that he and his team are capable of so much more. This is the team for Gio. Gio at this point has 3 events where he has earned a significant amount of points, or if you count Atlanta's mediocre performance. Top 4 events, as well as the Grand Challenges, have given him 850 points. Remember, only the top 5 events give you points. So if Gio could get one more big finish, the getting points would get extremely hard at this point. But on the other hand, one more big finish could be just enough to put him over the top. Well, what's next for Gio? Well, his dad has the same question. Gio tells his dad Portland is a week away, but he's not signed up for it. Why not? Asks Gio's dad. This simple 2-word question rings in Gio's mind. Why am I not signed up? So with less than a week away, signing up is exactly what Gio shall do. But Gio has another dilemma. He is starting to doubt his team. The team he just felt capable of getting his first medal on. His friends and good players who have his genuine best interest in mind think that the team is outdated and is going to hold Gio back. Gio spends 12 hours the day before the tournament looking at any single team that he can find from any tournament. He tries some teams out and makes the same conclusion every time. None of these teams feel as good as the team he has been rocking with. He changes the terror type of the bear, but otherwise keeps the team the same. How will Gio perform with the team he is losing confidence in?
Good morning, trainers, and welcome back to the 2025 Portland Regional Championships.
He starts the event with the 6-2 day 1. The usual, you survive day 1, but don't have any room for error for the rest of the tournament. Day 2, he wins the rest of his Swiss rounds to earn himself another top cut. He's all the way in top 8 now. He's on the cusp of getting his first ever medal. He's against his longtime friend Aaron. How's Gio feeling? Nervous? Excited? Well, Gio let the moment slip away. He admits that he didn't deserve to move on. I felt like I was not playing good competitive Pokemon, and I felt like I was making a lot of mistakes. I was letting the indifference of the outcome affect how I was approaching it. Another 280 points for Gio puts him at 1,130. That should be enough to secure himself a spot for Worlds. Gio has time for one more major, NAIC. A top 32 finish there gets him 200 points, an effective increase of 120 points because that knocks out Atlanta's performance of 80 points. Gio, with only counting his best 5 performances in the Grand Challenges, is at 1,250 points. That alone is more than enough to be in the top 75. In fact, that would be in the top 20. Throughout the season, Gio has been grinding these smaller tournaments for months and months, giving him another 380 points, putting his total at 1,630, putting him in 5th in the US and Canada. He has the points, he has the rep with the team, he has the team he likes. It's time for the real deal.
Hello, Pokemon trainers, Pokemon fans, Pokemon lovers. Welcome to the 2025 Pokemon World Championship.
As we see the court bid locked in, we gotta see Luca Cernavelli become your 2024 Pokemon World Champion.
I only have one thing to say to you.
Here's the water spout. Wolfie Glick is your 2016 Pokemon Video Game World Champion.
And Eduardo Jr. is your 2022 Pokemon World Champion.
Emilio going to go ahead and forfeit this match and wake up, world, because Paul Ruiz is your first ever Latin American World Champion. That last little bit of damage is going to KO the Cresselia, and Arash Omati is our first Italian World Champion.
Attack. Here's a double edge, and Naoto Mizoguchi is your 2019 Pokemon Video Game World Champion.
Still has 3 Pokemon remaining. Michael throws in the towel, and Shohei Kimura will be your 2023 Pokemon World Champion.
And going to take away half of Bo Rodom's health. Dragon Claw right back after a critical hit. A critical hit, and Satan Park takes down Bo Rodom, and Satan Park is your 2014 Pokemon World Video Game Champion.
There it is, guys. Both players shaking hands, and Shoma Honami is your 2015 Pokemon Video Game World Champion.
With the Moonblast onto Garchomp, a one-hit KO. Ryota Otsubo is your 2017 Masters World Champion.
A 3-time World Champion.
The Pokemon World Championships is here. Every single one of these 371 players have worked even harder this year to earn a spot in a less forgiving than ever qualification process to have a shot to name themselves a world champion. These are the best of the best. Nothing is held back here. Any tricks or discoveries that have been kept secret will be released in full force. But at the same time, it's just like any other tournament. It's the same game with the same rules. Who will shine when the lights are the brightest? Round 1 is against Yuan Ming Chu from Taiwan. The qualifications for Worlds in Taiwan is different than the US/Canada. You have to do well in small tournaments to qualify for a Master Ball League tournament, and getting a top 24 there gives you an invite to Worlds. It is considered harder to earn an invite to Worlds in Taiwan than it is in the US, so Yuan has definitely earned his spot here. He is running the pair of Zamazenta and Life Orb Calyrex Shadow, with 2 Fake Out users with Rillaboom and Smeargle, Redirection with Ogerpon Heartflame, and he also has Tornadus for speed control. The team aims to keep Calyrex safe with Fake Out and Redirection in Wide Guard to set up nasty plots and use Calyrex's high speed and powerful spread moves to overwhelm the opponent. Gio comes out on top. He is 1-0. Round 2. US's Joshua's Dank, getting here by being 67 points with a clean 1,000 points earned exactly. He has the same pair restricted as Yuan with Zamazenta and Calyrex Shadow, but with a slightly different approach in how to use the Calyrex. Like Yuan, he does have some redirection in Amoonguss and a Tailwind user in Whimsicott, but with Encore on the Calyrex instead of Nasty Claw, a Choice Scarf Chiyu with a Chien-Pao for good measure, Dank wants to be on the gas all the time, and to lock people into flailing around for playing too passively by encoring them. Gio wins this one too. He's 2-0. Round 3. Arath Vera from Mexico. 16 in points in the Latin America with 1,160, with multiple top 32 finishes while barely missing out on top 8 on several of them. Getting that many points without a single top 8, which spikes you in points heavily, requires an extreme amount of consistency. And take a guess what he's running? Calyrex Shadow and Zamazenta. Wow, where have I seen this before? Vera's approach is a bit closer to Yuan Ming's approach, with setting up nasty plots, with having 2 Fake Out users in Rillaboom and Incineroar, an Ogerpon Cornerstone for redirection, and a Raging Bolt to round it off for another self-efficient attacker. Gio wins his 3rd Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta matchup in a row. He's 3-0. Round 4, Argentina Sebastian Escalante. 3rd in points with 1,665 for Latin America. Sebastian is a regional champion, has gone 2nd place and a top 4 in this season alone, and has 7 top 8s as a master. And take a guess what he's running. You guess it, Calyrex, Ice, and Kyogre. This is a really tricky matchup for Gio. A Calyrex Ice that tears is really difficult to get rid of, with leftovers and Leech Seed to continually chip down Koraidon, combined with all the recoil Koraidon takes to itself with Life Orb and Flare Blitz, and Leech Seed being able to break Lunala's Shadow Shield safely. Then with Kyogre, which drastically reduces the firepower of Koraidon, Chiyu, while messing up Fluttermane and Brubon's Photosynthesis as well. That's not even going into the support Pokemon, the always annoying Smeargle, Landorus Incarnate with perfectly accurate Sandsear Storms thanks to the rain, and Grimmsnarl to set up screens, making these mons even more difficult to knock out. A tall task for Gio. That doesn't matter for him, he wins anyways. He's 4-0. Round 5, Jack Roth from Australia, with a top 8 in Brisbane Regionals. Being Australia gives you far less opportunities to perform at events because most of them are located at North America. So any top 8 with this limited amount of opportunities is even more impressive. Speed is the name of the game for Jack. A Choice Scarf Miraidon and a Zamazenta, with an Electric Seed Quiver Dance Volcarona, a Booster Energy Speed Fluttermane, and Extreme Speeding Dragonite with Chien-Pao. This team is all about speed, 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 and wants to run you over. Unfortunately for all these matches that weren't streamed, I can't say exactly what happened, but if there was any game for the Ursaluna to shine, I would have to imagine it to be this one. Gio's once again, he's 5-0 already. Round 6, Mao Harada from Japan. Japan is thought to be the strongest region with the strongest players, and Mao is definitely one of them, placing top 4 in Worlds in 2023. Japan is also known for having the hardest qualification process for any region. In Japan, instead of entering mostly in-person regionals and other big tournaments to get points to qualify, you instead have to enter Japan's version of the Grand Challenge, where you have to play best of one closed team sheet matches. And if you finish in the top 100 in one of these 3 Grand Challenges, you're automatically qualified for another online ladder tournament. Get a top 64 in that tournament, and you qualify for the in-person Japanese Nationals, as well as a spot in Worlds. I do want to go over how in-person Japanese National works, because it is so bizarre, at least compared to what I'm used to, and how the US does in-person tournaments. Instead of starting with Swiss rounds where you play a bunch of games and if you do well enough you move on, it is a double elimination tournament in the best of one closed team sheets. Until you get to top 8 where the matches go to best of 3 and now the team sheets become open. It's so chaotic. Mao ended with a finish of 33rd in one of the most unpredictable and stressful tournaments I've ever heard of. Mao, despite having success with his team in Japanese Nationals, has changed his team for Worlds. Mao changed his Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta core to a Calyrex Shadow Koraidon core. And with any good Calyrex Shadow team with Life Orb and Nasty Plot, he has the classic double fake out with Incineroar and Rillaboom, redirection with Friend Guard Clefairy, and a Flutter Mane because we already know how broken Flutter Mane is when the sun is active. Lucky for Gio and us, he gets to be on stream this time, something that just a few months ago seemed impossible. Let's take a look ourselves on how Gio pilots this matchup. Game 1. Gio leads Lunala Chi-Yu against Mouse Clefairy and Koraidon. This is a pretty awkward lead for Gio. Neither Chi-Yu or Lunala can protect her on Gio's side. And although the Chi-Yu outspeeds Koraidon thanks to Choice Scarf, Koraidon resists all of Gio's attack. And remember, Gio's Lunala is the one with power of Meteor Beam, not Moonblast. So the Koraidon is relatively safe against Lunala as well, especially with the Friend Guard Clefairy reducing the damage Koraidon won't even take. Gio can't even go for Trick Room here because the Clefairy can just encore the Lunala into mashing Trick Room. There is one silver lining here though, in that Mao's Koraidon fighting type move is Low Kick, and because Chi-Yu is so light, the super effective move does not one-shot Chi-Yu. Gio decides not to switch, and go all out in the offensive, with Heat Wave and Moongeist Beam. The Clefairy protects, with the Moongeist Beam taking Koraidon to around half, and the Sun-boosted Heat Wave doing 0 damage because it missed. Mao gets the Flame Charge Lunala, breaking the Shadow Shield, and even worse, the Koraidon now outspeeds to Chi-Yu. Mao can threaten to KO either Pokemon on Gio's side with a Helping Hand plus an attack. Gio sticks to his game plan and keeps targeting the Koraidon. Mao KOs to Chi-Yu, and a Moongeist Beam KOs to Koraidon. It's 3-3. Gio sends in the Koraidon instead of Flutter Mane, and Mao sends out the Calyrex Shadow. Mao can easily KO the Lunala with an Astral Barrage that outspeeds the whole field, but Mao has to worry about Wide Guard. But Gio has to worry about potential Encore going into Lunala and a possible Psychic that goes around Wide Guard and can KO Koraidon. But what about Follow Me or Protect? And of course you have to worry about Terra. What is the best play here? Gio for the 3rd straight turn keeps the pedal to the metal, while Mao slows things down with a Protect on both his Mons. Gio Terra fires his Koraidon to play around Psychic and tries to Flame Charge the Clefairy to outspeed the Calyrex Shadow next turn, and Gio burns his one Meteor Beam of the game right into a Protect. Gio spent a lot of resources for that turn and got 0 damage from it, as Mao has to worry about a lot less options now. At least Gio knows neither Pokemon can Protect again this turn safely. Maybe he could take advantage of that. Gio finally slows down a bit, and protects his Koraidon and Moongeist Beams to Clefairy. Gio is banking on no Astral Barrage as that would lose Gio the game on the spot. Mao Terra Darks his Calyrex to play around Moongeist Beam into the Calyrex, and Helping Hand boosts a Psychic right into the Koraidon Protect. Lunala's special attack boosted Moongeist Beam does 75% to the Clefairy, but the Clefairy is still alive. Gio got this call exactly right, but as long as his Calyrex is still healthy, he's in deep water. But now it's Mao's turn to be able to target whatever he wants because neither Pokemon on Gio's side can protect. And what makes this even worse is that, thanks to Mao's Terra Dark, Lunala with no power-up poses 0 threat to the Calyrex Shadow. Gio is also on his last turn of Sun. Without the Sun, the Koraidon does not nearly have the same firepower. What even worse is that Flutter Mane won't be able to outspeed the Calyrex Shadow without the Sun. That's part of the reason why Mao is playing so slow. He knows Gio is on a clock. Gio for the 3rd straight turn does not Wide Guard in front of the Calyrex Shadow, and switches the Koraidon out for Flutter Mane, as Mao finally lets a Helping Hand boosted Astral Barrage to blow up Lunala and knock Flutter Mane down to its Focus Sash. The game is over for Gio. There's nothing that could stop a Follow Me plus Astral Barrage because Calyrex is going to be faster than Koraidon. Mao double protects his turn just to be safe as Gio clicks Moonblast and Flare Blitz. Gio makes the same clicks as last turn, and Mao does the following Astral Barrage we just talked about. Moonblast KOs the Clefairy and
out as well. Here's the Flare Blitz. It's boosted by the sun. It's got that Life Orb into the Terra Dark Calyrex Shadow Rider. That's going to be enough for the KO. Gio looking mighty pleased about that. And now the tables have turned.
Koraidon goes next. Mao's Kali Shadow and a decent amount of trainers of other faster restricteds have started to often increase their bulk to try to live certain combinations of attacks, instead of trying to always attack first. And this has cost in Mao. The announcers were stunned, and seeing this as it happened, I was just as surprised as they were. Mao's last Mon is his Focus Sash Fluttermane. These Fluttermane are almost guaranteed to be the speed tied, and Gio's Koraidon just took a lot of recoil damage from the Life Orb Flare Blitz. This game is far from over. The turn starts and Mao's Fluttermane goes first. The Icy Wind connects on Gio's Mons, knocking out Fluttermane and cancelling out the speed boost Gio's Koraidon gets from a Flame Charge. And the Shadow Ball next turn is just enough to finish off the Koraidon. Gio's Koraidon had at least a 30% chance of living depending on the exact training. Mao gets the roll this time. Gio's down 0-1 in a roller coaster of a game. Gio knowing his Koraidon is faster than Calyrex is huge information that he could use for the rest of the set. Gio makes an adjustment game too. He leads with Koraidon and Brute Bonnet, leaving his Lunala behind, as Mao switches up his lead as well with Fluttermane and Koraidon, and Mao has outled Gio again. Brute Bonnet does not run Protect and is slower than any Mon in the field, and the Fluttermane and Koraidon both resonate with super effective stab moves, and there is no switch in Gio can make that would be remotely happy with taking something like a Flare Blitz and Moonblast. And Gio's Koraidon isn't safe either. The faster Fluttermane can KO that with a Moonblast too. Gio, like in the most of Game 1, swings aggressively. Terras his Brute Bonnet to water with a Spore into Koraidon, and Gio's Koraidon Flame charges into Fluttermane. And also like Game 1, Mao double protects when Gio Terras. Mao gains the info on Terra in exchange for Gio knowing Mao can't protect next turn risk-free. Gio, seeing 0 Spore immunities last game, rips a Spore into the Fluttermane spot as Koraidon protects himself from getting hit by a potential Moonblast. But Mao has ditched his Calyrex Shadow and Clefairy completely and double switches the Rillaboom and Safety Goggles Incineroar in. Both Mons of Gio can't protect against 2 potential Mons that could fake out. Gio attempts to close combat the Incineroar as the Evil Cat flinches the Koraidon, and as Brute Bonnet is basically useless against 2 Grass Resists that are immune to Rage Powder and Spore, is forced to switch it to Chiyu, and that Chiyu eats a Wood Hammer which does over half the Chiyu despite it being a resisted hit. But now Gio isn't the one with all the speed control against 2 Mons that can't protect. This is Gio's chance to make some big time progress, especially since each Mon on Gio's side has a stab move that is super effective against the opponent. Even an intimidated Koraidon is still super threatening with a Life Orb in Gio's super aggressive stats and moveset. It is now Mao's turn to dance and slow things down a bit. Gio has no interest in attacking this Incineroar, and it poses no offensive threat to either of his Mons. He locks into a sun-boosted Heat Wave with Chiyu and goes for a close combat into the Rillaboom. But thanks to Mao's Intimidate and the Terra Water on Rillaboom, the monkey survives both hits and Rillaboom KOs the Chiyu with Wood Hammer. But the recoil is also enough for the Rillaboom to take itself out, as Mao also switches his Incineroar out for Koraidon with dodges the Heat Wave. That's 2 Heat Wave misses this set in as many games. It's 3 versus 3. Gio sends in his healthy Terra Water Brute Bonnet, and Mao sends in the Fluttermane. Thanks to removing one of the 2 Spore Immune Pokemon and the Brute Bonnet being Terra Water, Brute Bonnet is in a very good spot unlike the start of the game. Its defense boost from Photosynthesis makes it one of the few Mons that can beat any enemy Koraidon attack if Fluttermane no longer threatens it with a Moonblast. Getting a Spore Call right could really swing the game in Gio's favor. Gio protects his Koraidon, going against his usual pattern of putting pressure on his opponent at all times, and because he knows the Brute Bonnet probably isn't even being targeted, as even a double up probably cannot KO it. Both of Mao's attacks gets blocked by Koraidon, as Brute Bonnet puts Fluttermane to sleep. A huge win for Gio as Sun expires. Mao's Koraidon, without the Sun, just cannot do significant damage to Gio's Koraidon without clicking a fighting move. This means Gio has an opportunity to get in Fluttermane safely against a sleeping enemy Fluttermane, and a Koraidon that is very unlikely picking a fire move into Gio's Koraidon slot. And even if Mao makes a hard switch into Incineroar, he's not making any progress in this battle and can't fake out the Ghost type Fluttermane. Gio clicks his risk-free Spore into Koraidon and switches his Intimidated Koraidon into Fluttermane and gets exactly what he expects. A low kick into the immune Fluttermane as Mao's Fluttermane takes his first turn to sleep and Brute Bonnet puts Koraidon to sleep. Gio has all the momentum now. Gio could play it safe and Moonblast to Koraidon's spot as that either KOs Koraidon since it can't wake up this turn or Incineroar that takes a big neutral hit. But Gio's gonna gamble. He clicks Shadow Ball into Mao's Fluttermane and doubles into it with a Brute Bonnet Sucker Punch. Good news for Gio, it was the Koraidon that switched out. The bad news is that Mao's Fluttermane wakes up after only one turn of sleep and protects. Gio has dealt 0 damage on the turn, and now things suddenly don't look nearly as good anymore. Gio continues targeting the Fluttermane with a Shadow Ball and a Spore this time, but Mao is ready for this. He switches his Fluttermane back to Koraidon, and the Shadow Ball from Gio does around 40%, and Spore hits into the already sleeping past Motorbike. Gio just cannot pin Mao's Fluttermane down. Mao's Flare Blitz from Incineroar puts Gio's Fluttermane into Focus Sash. There is a silver lining to this. Gio can force Mao to either sack his Koraidon to Moonblast since Koraidon hasn't taken any sleep turns yet, or Mao has to switch again and get his Fluttermane's Focus Sash broken. Mao lets the Koraidon faint as Incineroar finishes off Gio's 1 HP Fluttermane. It's down to Gio's fully healthy Koraidon Brute Bonnet versus Mao's 70% Incineroar and a Focus Sash Fluttermane. But this is exactly the spot Gio was looking for. Gio can keep Rage Powdering the Fluttermane's attack away and keep targeting mons down one by one. He first close combats the Incineroar since it can't protect, and thanks to the Citrus Berry from Brute Bonnet, the Brute Bonnet can live 2 Moonblasts from Fluttermane, even if one of them is boosted by the Incineroar helping hand, as Gio's Koraidon Flame charges the Fluttermane twice for the win. Wow, and this set isn't over yet, we still have a Game 3 to play. Time for Game 3. Winner of this guarantees himself a spot into Day 2. Mao leads off the same as last time, Koraidon Fluttermane, and Gio, who won last game, is of course leading with Lunala Chi-Yu, what he lost with on Game 1. Benching a Mon that lost you a game, winning the next game after you bench that Mon, then bringing back the Mon you benched Game 1 is certainly a bold call. And at first glance, this looks like an absolute disaster call to make. The Fluttermane with the booster speed outspeeds everything and can destroy Lunala with a Shadow Ball, even through Shadow Shield. And what makes Fluttermane even worse than Calyrex Shadow is that Gio can't even wide guard the Ghost type move. And the Koraidon can resist any of the Chi-Yu's attacks Gio can throw at it. Gio does what he has done so often when his back is against the wall. Swing, swing, swing. Thanks to Brute Bonnet being such a huge piece Game 2, Gio now knows Mao has to at least consider Brute Bonnet being in the back. And Gio is willing to gamble that Mao will not Shadow Ball Lunala slot as Brute Bonnet might come in. And Gio is correct. Mao doubles into the Chi-Yu with Moonblast and Flare Blitz, knocking the Chi-Yu out, but not before the Chi-Yu is able to get a Heat Wave off, breaking Fluttermane's Focus Sash, and taking Koraidon to just about half after the recoil damage from Flare Blitz. And Lunala KOs the Fluttermane with Moongeist Beam, ending slightly ahead on damage for Gio after it looked so bad seems like a miracle. And now we could see the rest of the Gios team. We could see that Gio hasn't brought Brute Bonnet at all, probably partly because of the double Spore immune Mons Mao brought Game 2. And Gio's other 2 Mons are in fact Koraidon and Fluttermane. Since Gio knocked down Mao's Flutter, as long as Sun is up, Gio's Flutter will almost always be the fastest thing on the field. Gio saves Flutter and sends in Koraidon. Mao senses Calyrex Shadow. Horrible, horrible news for Lunala fans. And Gio has to be thinking about just how good a Terra Water Brute Bonnet would be this game. But remember, in Game 1, Gio's Koraidon is actually faster than Mao's Calyrex Shadow. One Flare Blitz into Calyrex Shadow and it's gone. Gio fires a Terra Fire Flare Blitz into the Calyrex and a Moongeist Beam into the Koraidon. Mao sends Clefairy out for the birds as it gets OHKO'd by the Flare Blitz, and Mao's Koraidon low kicks Gio's Koraidon to trade 1-for-1 again this turn. Gio has his hands on his head. He wanted that Calyrex Shadow gone so badly, and it's still at full while he lost his best answer for it. Moongeist Beam with no Beats of Ruin cannot KO the Koraidon, as it lives at around 50%. It's Gio's Lunala and Sash Fluttermane against Mao's weak Koraidon and healthy Calyrex Shadow, and Mao still has his Terra. Gio's Flutter with 3 turns of Sun left will be able to always go first for a while, but Gio has to make a call here. A Shadow Ball KOs the Calyrex Shadow if Mao doesn't Terra his Cali, but a Moonblast will KO if the Calyrex does Terra. And of course, Gio also has to play the game with whether his Lunala wants to wide guard against a potential Astral Barrage, and both the Mouse Pokemon can easily protect here. Gio decides to call up Mouse Terra on a Calyrex Shadow with a Moonblast, and just in case he's wrong, he clicks wide guard to still be in the game if Mao does click Astral Barrage. But if he guesses correctly, Gio wins anyways. The turn start and Mao's terraces his Koraidon, and neither of Mao's mons protect. Cali Shadow survives the Moonblast, and Mao clicks Psychic and Flame Charge into the Flutter Mane, knocking it out and ensuring Mao the win on the spot. After strenuous and long first 2 games, Gio loses on game 3 in essentially 3 turns on just one call that Mao was able to read Gio on. Gio has finally met his match on day 1 and takes his first L of the tournament, falling to 5-1. Taking 1 loss is fine, but taking 1 more might have to make you play another match in top cut, and taking 2 more losses eliminates you entirely. Gio's still in a good spot, but he can't let these losses continue. Round 7. Nick Navarre, residing in the US, 2-time regional winner and the top point earner for North America in 2017. Someone who's not afraid to roll the dice.
Triple. It's gonna hit the triple protect!
This is the second Calyrex Ice and Kyogre team of the day, which we have gone over can be a very tricky matchup. With a good old Rillaboom for fake out support and extra healing for the Calyrex Ice, and Amoonguss with Pollen Puff, a really scary offensive move against Bonnet, Urshifu Rapid Strike with a Choice Scarf which threatens to one-shot several of Gio's Pokemon in the rain, and a Flutter Mane of his own for extra speed control, damage, and a giant backup threat if Nick ever loses the Weather War. Gio doesn't let the loss get to him, and he picks up his 6th win in 7 rounds, and more importantly has secured himself a spot in day 2. But there is more Pokemon to be played, and there's no time to let your foot off the gas. The less mistakes you make today, the more room you have for error for tomorrow. Round 8. Kiwamu Endo from Japan. Top cutter in Worlds 2018 and finished 2nd in Japanese Nationals last year. Kiwamu has 5 of the 6 mons that Gio's round 1 opponent has, Yuang Ming. The Life Orb Calyrex Shadow, the Zamazenta, the double Fake Out in Rillaboom and Smeargle, a Sky Plate Tornadus for speed control. The only difference we got here is a Booster Energy Raging Bolt over the Ogerpon. And just like all the Calyrex, Shadow, and Zama teams, they stand no chance for Gio. Gio is up to 7-1 to wrap up day 1, a fantastic performance that anyone should be proud of. Only one person has been able to go undefeated throughout the day, which is Ko Suki. Ko has already secured himself a top cut after day 1, which is absolutely ridiculous. If Gio can win his next couple matches in day 2, he can not only secure himself a chance to win it all in the final bracket, but he might be able to skip around.
Good morning, Pokemon trainers. It's another lovely morning here in Anaheim, California for the Pokemon World Championships.
It's time for some more Pokemon. The day is different, but the goal is the same. Outwill, outplay, and outlast in both a physical and mental sense the best players in the world. But these players are now at the top 1% of 1% of these players. A run can end just as quickly as it starts. Round 9. Ling Longyu from China. I wish I could give you information how China's qualification process is for Worlds, but after research, I just couldn't find anything. If anyone has any information, please let me know. I'm very interested. Anyways, what we do know from Ling is that he has a top 4 in the 2024 Perth Regionals and top 16 at the 2025 Melbourne Regionals. Some impressive results given the limited opportunity that he has been given. And wow, would you look at that? It's Life Orb Calyrex Shadow Rider and a Zamazenta. Who could have seen this coming? Imagine you took Yuan Ming Gios Team and replaced the Tornadus with a Booster Energy Raging Bolt. Okay, I do want to take a second here and say, I'm not trying to downplay or bully anyone who is playing Calyrex Shadow and Zamazenta. Play what you like and play to win. And also, I'd like to say that I would love to talk about the intricacies and how these teams are slightly different on what mons they want to outspeed, what moves they're trying to live, among other things. But this script is already 10.5 pages, single space, and 2, I don't know what the stat spreads are. These are not disclosed unless a player gives that information away, but they have no reason or obligation to do so. But the stakes are the highest it's ever been for Gio. Win this and he guarantees himself a top cut for Worlds, something he has never done or has really this close to doing. If you want to be considered in the best of the best, you have to top cut Worlds. Gio's able to win game 1 easily in fact. He just needs one more win. But Lin won't make it easy. At this stage of the tournament, these players are just too good to get run over for the entire set. Lin will adjust and will make the rest of the set feel like 100 sets. Game 2. Gio gets a massive lead. He can taste the top cut. But like I said, nobody's going to make it easy for him. Not even Lady Luck. Lin's Smeargle gets a speed boost, and things start to turn on their head. Gio's able to sneak in a double up into Lin's Zamazenta, but it holds on at a sliver of HP. Gio spends 4 turns with a shield-shaped dog, being so close to being knocked out, yet so far. Gio finally is able to knock out the Zamazenta in what feels like an eternity. The game is tactically not over, but Gio can't stop crying mid-game. Gio has done it. He has top cut the World Championship. All the years of hard work, and he can finally call himself in the best of the best. But Gio can't let his emotions get the better of him. He needs to lock back in. The thing that is saving him is that he won his set in 2 games, not 3. So he has a bit extra time to recompose himself. You don't want to be crying while looking at your opponent's team sheet. They're probably not going to be running at maximum mental capacity. But more importantly, you aren't going to see the sheet very well with all those tears in your eyes. Then you're going to make your opponent's team sheet wet from all of your tears, and that's both rude and embarrassing. Just would not recommend crying before the set. Round 10. Yato Kishida from Japan. Yato placed 9th in Japanese Nationals this year and 33rd in Japanese Nationals last year. Wish I could find more information on him as a player, but the fact that he's 8-1 in this stage of the game, which is guaranteed top cut, I don't think I need to justify any of these players' skill levels at this point anymore. In Nationals, Yato ran Calyrex, Ice, and Miraidon, and it had Annihilate, which is cool because you don't see that mon much in double restricted formats, which of course means he switched to Life Orb, Calyrex Shadow, and Zamazenta, which that means you're going to see Fake Out support with Rillaboom and Incineroar. But there are a few things that make this team a bit more unique than the other Calyrex Shadow and Zamazenta cores. First, the Calyrex Shadow second attack, Draining Kiss, with a Terra Fairy to go with it. Most Calyrexes are going with Psychic as their second attack, or another stab option to hit normal types and to play around Wide Guard. This makes a lot of sense when you see that his redirection of choice isn't Ogerpon or Smeargle, but a Friend Guard Clefairy that we saw with Mao. Increasing damage taken from partners with Friend Guard and healing with Life Dew. And then you look at the third difference of his team, which is Light Clay Grimmsnarl with Screens and Thunder Wave. Seeing the extra reinforcements to keep Calyrex Shadow safe with the Terra Fairy Draining Kiss demonstrates that the approach that he has with Calyrex Shadow is a bit different. He wants it to stay on the field longer, probably sacrificing some either speed or power for some extra bulk to make his Calyrex Shadow a self-healing unkillable machine. And just like any other Calyrex Shadow and Zamazenta team, Gio defeats him again. He's 9-1. Gio has finished Swiss rounds with a record of 9-1. One of 5 players out of 371 to only drop 1 set. And because of this win, he secures himself a bye in a top 16 finish at worst. And a top 16 finish means he has secured himself at least $5,000. Thanks to Gio's bye, he has a bit more time to prepare for his next opponent. He doesn't know who it is exactly, but it's going to be between 1 or 2 people. And that person ends up being Deotai Masart. Francis Deotai Masart is 8th in points in Europe, has a top 4 in LA Internationals, has a 2nd in 2026 Gdańsk Regionals, and a top 8 in EUIC, and a top 4 in Stuttgart Regionals. This is all within a 365-day spread. Deotai is running Scarf from Miraidon and Cover Cloak Calyrex Shadow to prevent things like Icy Wind and Snarl from ruining the horse. About as speedy of a duo as you can get. When these 2 demons aren't trying to blow you up, there's Electric Seed, Quiver Dance Volcarona for an alternative win condition, and the 3 support mons that are meant to be even more annoying than the usual batch. Of course, there's the Fake Out Rillaboom and the Friend Guard Follow Me Clefairy, but the Incineroar has an extra trick up its sleeve, Roar. This team wants to disrupt you and always have you off balance while the restricteds are hitting you hard and before you can do anything about it. I have to imagine that the trick from Core would come into play here, but no matter what Gio did, he won again. He's in top 8. He's 3 sets away. After this win, Gio has won 5 sets in a row. This is a man on the run of his life, with a team that he trusts that has been rewarding him with its confidence over and over again. There has only been one person that was able to stop him this whole tournament, but there's no way he plays him again. Gio's probably going to face another Zamazenta Calyrex Shadow team and bully that for the 12th time. So, who is going to be Gio's next sad sucker? That's right, Gio's ex-opponent is the only person in the entire building that was able to hand Gio a loss. This bracket is not holding back any punches. In order to become the world champion, Gio is going to have to beat everyone, including the man that was able to beat him. Gio was very close to pulling away with a dub against Mal the first time. One correct prediction on Game 3 and Gio had it. Gio might be the same person as yesterday, but he's not the same player. You feel physically and mentally a bit different each day. Gio has one more day of experience at the World Championships, and more importantly, he has more info on Mal's team and how he plays. But the same thing could be said for Mal, who also grew a bit since yesterday. Game 1, Gio leads Lunala Chiyu, and Mal leads Fluttermane Koraidon. Remember, Gio brought Lunala in 2 to 3 games against Mal, and those were the 2 games that he lost. And once again, Gio seems to be on the back foot off the lead. Fluttermane outspeeds Lunala and threatens it with a 4 times corrective Shadow Ball, and Koraidon is not scared of anything that Gio has to throw at him. Gio kinda has to tear Lunala into a water type on turn 1, and he plans to Moongeist Beam the Koraidon, hoping he can knock it out with a double up. Burning Terra this early never feels good, but you can't lose this restricted on turn 1 before it can do anything, and Terra Water might help against Koraidon in the future. And Gio's Chiyu will be of course clicking that Sun boosted Heat Wave. Mal's Fluttermane launches a Shadow Ball, and the Terra Water Lunala breaking Shadow Shield and doing around 20%. The Sun boosted Heat Wave puts Fluttermane on 10% and does a bit over half to Koraidon thanks to the crit. Koraidon Flame charges Lunala, which now resists the fire type move and is still at 60% after getting doubled up. Gio's Moongeist Beam KOs the Koraidon, but let me get this straight. The Moongeist Beam with Beats of Ruin still KOs even without the crit from Chiyu's Heat Wave. Gio has knocked out one of Mal's restricteds on turn 1 while keeping all of his Pokemon alive and at least somewhat healthy. Mal senses Calyrex Shadow next. Gio's Chiyu is a big problem for Mal. Mal's Calyrex attacks are either resisted by Chiyu or Chiyu straight up immune to. And thanks to Choice Scarf, Chiyu is faster than Calyrex and threatens huge damage with a Sun boosted Heat Wave on the Calyrex Shadow and will finish off the Fluttermane. Mal's Fluttermane is faster than the Chiyu. He could either do decent damage with a neutral Moonblast, or try to Icy Wind the Chiyu to make the Calyrex faster, but neither of these choices actually threaten to KO the Chiyu this turn. Gio wide guards Lunala to stop any Astral Barrages or Icy Winds that could slow down the Chiyu, and Chiyu will keep on Heat Waving. Mal protects the Fluttermane, hoping he can find a way to KO the Lunala this turn. Then the Fluttermane can help win Speed Control back, and Calyrex Shadow can start a potential reverse sweep. Chiyu Heat Waves knocks Calyrex Shadow well into the red, and Mal gets to call it right. Pally Psychics into Lunala with the boost from Life Orb and Beads of Ruin, and no Shadow Shield, the Psychic will put Lunala at a singular point of HP, a huge survival. That means Gio can wide guard again to prevent his Chiyu from getting Icy Winded once again. Gio makes the same play as last turn. Wide guard and Heat Wave. Mal protects his Calyrex, and Fluttermane Moonblasts the 1 HP Lunala, putting it out of its misery. Mal needs a miss from Chiyu, Heat Wave, to have any chance of winning. But Gio's Chiyu is on target and connects. Gio sends his Fluttermane out next, and Mal reveals his final Mon being Clefairy, which doesn't do any damage. The game is over, Gio KOs both Mons next turn, and Gio wins Game 1 in 4 turns without even having to reveal his final Pokemon. Gio is up 1-0 against the only player to seem to have Gio figured out. Game 2. It's the same leads on both sides. Chiyu Lunala versus Koraidon Fluttermane, and Gio has no interest in switching up his play. Heat Wave from Chiyu, and Terra Lunala into a water type and launch a Moongeist Beam to Koraidon. It's just such a strong play. And the worst case scenario is Koraidon protects, and Fluttermane breaks Shadow Shield with a Shadow Ball. But even then, assuming Heat Wave connects, the Fluttermane will be in the red and Lunala will still be pretty healthy. And you can just make the same play next turn, and that's exactly what happens. Mal smartly protects his Koraidon. Fluttermane Shadow Ball does around 20% to Gio's Lunala and breaks Shadow Shield, and Heat Wave from Gio's Chiyu will put Fluttermane to the red. Gio sees very little reason to change his plan, especially after seeing what Mal brought Game 1. Continue Moongeist Beaming and Heat Waving, but Mal has made some more adjustments. Koraidon switches out for Incineroar, a Pokemon that can take Ghost-type moves and Fire-type attacks way better than anything Mal brought Game 1. And Mal's Fluttermane Moonblast Chiyu, knocking it down to 40%. The Sun-boosted Heat Wave misses the Incineroar, missing a good amount of potential chip damage into it, but doesn't miss the Heat Wave on the Fluttermane, and the Fluttermane goes down. The Moongeist Beam goes into the Incineroar and does around 30% to it. Mal isn't done with his adjustments, as to take the KO'd Fluttermane spot is the Rillaboom. Mal has left his Calyrex Shadow behind, and now all of a sudden, the Terra Water Gio has used for Lunala doesn't look so good anymore into the Grass-type Rillaboom. On top of that, Gio has now to deal with 2 Mons that have Fake Out pressure when none of his Mons can protect on the field. With Gio having a frail Fluttermane in the back and a Koraidon that does a lot of recoil to itself with Life Orb and Flare Blitz and also lowers its own defenses with close combat, there isn't really a great switch in for the Woodhammer. Gio is content with letting Lunala go down. If the Lunala somehow lives, great, then he can fire super effective Meteor Beam with Incineroar. The Chiyu slot is either going to get ignored completely or faked out, so Gio sees this as a slot to be one to get Koraidon in safely. Mao Terra waters his Rillaboom and doubles the Lunala with a fake out and Wood Hammer, knocking it out. It's 3 versus 3. Gio sends the Chi-Yu back out. Gio's goal right now is simple. Take out the Rillaboom so his Focus Sash Flutter Mane in the back can take care of Koraidon, and Gio's Koraidon can take out the Incineroar with a fighting move later. Mao's Rillaboom, of course being Assault Vested, cannot protect. Gio will close combat the Rillaboom that has been chipped down to 70% thanks to Wood Hammer recoil, and Chi-Yu will get whatever extra damage he can get with the Sun Boosted Heat Wave. Mao Grassy lies the Chi-Yu, but even with a critical hit, the Chi-Yu hangs on at 6 HP. Chi-Yu's Heat Wave chips both Incineroar and Rillaboom to under half, and Koraidon knocks out the Rillaboom with a close combat. Mao makes a savvy play with the Incineroar using U-turn to knock out the Chi-Yu and be able to switch the Incineroar back in for the dead Rillaboom spot to get an extra Intimidate and Fake Out pressure, but it's not enough. Mao can't fake out the Ghost-type Flutter Mane, and since Flutter Mane has Focus Sash, no amount of stalling of Sun turns and Protect chance will ever be able to stop a combination of 4 times super effective Moonblast into Koraidon and a close combat into Incineroar. Gio wins 2 turns later and revenge is his. Gio speed ran through the one person that was able to beat him so far and is in top 4. Gio is 1 set away from being in the finals, 1 set away from being able to take a break from playing Pokemon for the day and have a chance to relax, 1 more set for making it to Championship Sunday. But that means Gio's upcoming opponent will not only be the most skilled out of this stacked field, but also means they are the most desperate to win, as they are so close to the finals. Gio needs to give this final set 110% despite of how fried his brain might be. Gio's semi-final opponent is Hirofumi Kimura, who got here with a 33rd in this year's Japanese Nationals. Hirofumi has been dominating the Japanese scene for a long time. He's gotten top 32 at Worlds the past 2 years. In 2019, he even made to the finals of the World Championship. But most impressive of all, Hirofumi won Japanese Nationals twice in a row. Gio is against a player who has done it all besides win Worlds, and Hirofumi is in top 4 of the one tournament that has barely eluded him for years. Gio has an exceptional run. Many people didn't think he'd make it this far. There will be no shame if Gio's Cinderella story ended here against a man that feels like it's not a matter of if he's going to win the World Championship, but when he's going to win the World Championship. But Gio is not thinking about that. Let's get into the match. Hirofumi's restricted pair is Koraidon and Leech Seed Leftovers Calyrex Ice. We've talked about how annoying Calyrex Ice can be for Gio. When Terra, it's bulky enough to lift even the most powerful attacks Gio can throw at it. And with Glacial Lance, Leech Seed, and the recoil damage Koraidon does to itself, Gio's Koraidon can easily knock itself out before it can knock out the Calyrex Ice. Hirofumi also has a Safety Goggles Incineroar and Rillaboom as 2 Fake Out users that are immune to Brute Bond shenanigans. Linderous Eye for another fast attacker that can hit like a truck, and a Moody Smeargle which can throw a wrench into anyone's game plan with Room Nation instead of Fake Out because he has 2 Fake Out users already. Needless to say, Gio has a tough task ahead of him, but is he up for it? Let's find out. Day 1, Gio's Koraidon and Chi-Yu with Lunala and Brute Bond in the back against Hirofumi's own Koraidon and Smeargle. Both of Hirofumi's mons have Protect, but Gio has the speed control. Gio with the Choice Scarf is for sure the fastest thing in the field, and his Koraidon's at the very worst speed tying Hirofumi's Koraidon. But with the clear Amulet set and no close combat, there's a decent chance Hirofumi drops some speed for some bulk. Gio can use aggressive and decisive plays. He instantly locks in Heat Wave and close combat with Koraidon. If Gio gets his call right, he'll have eliminated Hirofumi's largest threat by far, and possibly the only mon that could slow Gio down long term. Hirofumi plays it as safe as possible, and double protects the C with the Chi-Yu locked into, and maybe for Moody can make some magic happen. Moody's an ability where at the end of every turn, a random stat is increased by 2 stages and a different stat is decreased by 1 stage. In a mon with bad stat like Smeargle, a 1-stage stat drop is usually not a big deal, but as 2-stage stat increase, the right stat can be game warping. Smeargle gets a special defense raise and lowers the special attack. Not great for Gio, but by also no means a disaster. Now that Hirofumi double protected, Gio has the free range to target whatever he wants with no fear. Gio decides to switch it up and double target the Smeargle with a Flame Charge and Heat Wave. Gio needs to make sure he doesn't fall behind Hirofumi's Koraidon in the Flame Charge Wars, or he won't be able to set the pace of the battle anymore. Hirofumi makes a great call, switching the Smeargle to Incineroar to take less than half to the 2 resisted attacks and gets an Intimidate down. The Heat Wave does around 40% to Hirofumi's Koraidon, which Terra Fires and Flame Charges into Gio's Chi-Yu to do more than half to it and to make sure Koraidon outspeeds Chi-Yu next turn. This Chi-Yu does not have Protect to get around the Fake Out turn. Gio is hovering over close combat and Heat Wave. His instinct tells him to keep swinging, but he doesn't go for it. Lunala switches in to try to play around the Fake Out turn, and Koraidon protects to make sure nothing bad happens to it as Gio slows down. The Fake Out has nowhere to go, but Hirofumi lands a Flame Charge into Lunala, breaking his Shadow Shield, and now I'm facing Gios Koraidon. Hirofumi has just won the Flame Charge war just like that, but it's not all bad. Hirofumi's chipped Koraidon still goes down to Gio's close combat, and since Gios Koraidon is still Dragon type, Hirofumi can't KO Gios Koraidon with a Sun boosted Flare Blitz. And even though Lunala can't protect, Hirofumi still has to worry about Terra Water from Lunala, which can ruin his day. And Meteor Beam from Lunala will definitely KO Incineroar here. Gio targets Koraidon with close combat and targets Meteor Beam into Incineroar, saving his 1 Terra for another day. Hirofumi protects his Koraidon and switches into Smeargle, just giving away its Focus Sash so he can safely pivot later to further reduce Koraidon's damage output. The Meteor Beam misses the Smeargle. Smeargle gets to keep its Focus Sash, but even worse, Smeargle gets a speed boost. This Smeargle can now Spore before Lunala can act next turn. Gio has no choice but to let Lunala get Flare Blitz down. Gio can't waste his 1 Terra to survive just 1 move and then gets Spore before getting any value from Lunala living. Gio's Koraidon gets its 2nd Flame Charge boost, matching Hirofumi's 2 speed boosts and breaks Smeargle's Focus Sash, and Gio's Koraidon is put to sleep. Once again, thanks to that speed boost Smeargle got earlier, Gio's Chiyu is now slower than the Smeargle, and the Smeargle can just put it to sleep before the Chiyu can do anything. So Brubron is the only answer for Gio to send out here. Hirofumi believes that he can clean up the game with Calyrex Ice if he can take out the Koraidon and the Chiyu. So even though the Brubron is the safer target since it can't protect, Hirofumi double targets the Koraidon, and Gio's Koraidon hangs on. But since Gio's Brubron was left unchecked, it can land a big Spore into Hirofumi's Koraidon. Gio has to take advantage of the Hirofumi's sleeping Koraidon and passes Smeargle and fast. Gio gambles on Hirofumi not clicking Spore into the sleeping Koraidon slot and switches in Chiyu. And Brubon's Sucker Punch is Smeargle just in case it tries to ruinate. Hirofumi goes for Spiky Shield. Gio has finally gave himself an opening if Hirofumi's Koraidon can stay asleep and his Chiyu can land his moves. Gio clicks to spread Heat Wave and Rage Powder to protect the Chiyu from Spore. Hirofumi's Koraidon has a 2/3 chance to stay asleep, and it does in this instance. Hirofumi makes a good call and Smeargle ruinates to Brubon, taking it to 75% after the Citrus Berry, and Chiyu Heat Wave double connects, taking out the Smeargle and leaving Koraidon in range of anything. Hirofumi sends in the Safety Goggles Incineroar, whose defensive typing and item seems like a nightmare for Gio. Gio is forced to Terra his Brubon now. It's in front of 2 fire types, and his mons are running out of health for him to even get value out of Terra. Actually no, he keeps his Brubon a grass type and clicks Seed Bomb to try and finish off the Koraidon if it stays asleep, and Gio continues to click that Heat Wave with the Choice Scarf Chiyu. Hirofumi's Koraidon is now at coin flip's odds of waking up. Hirofumi wins this one, and uses that to protect for 1 more turn. Gio's Chiyu chips down Incineroar a bit more, and Chiyu barely hangs on after an Incineroar Flare Blitz. And once again, Gio keeps his Brubonic Grass type and clicks Sucker Punch into Koraidon, as the Koraidon either has to go for a double protect, glitch out, or die to the Sucker Punch, and Chiyu does what the Chiyu always does best, clicking Heat Wave. Hirofumi tries to double protect and fails, so the Chiyu knocks out the Koraidon with Heat Wave, as Hirofumi Incineroar hangs on, and Gio's Chiyu gets knocked out with Knockoff. It's 2 versus 2. Gio's sleeping 1-tap Koraidon and mostly healthy Chiyu versus Hirofumi's 1-tap Incineroar and full health Calyrex Ice. Gio's Koraidon has taken 1 turn to sleep, which means it has a 1 in 3 chance of waking up we discussed earlier. Gio needs it to wake up now in order to try to win this game. Brubon's Sucker Punch finishes off the Incineroar, next is Gio's Koraidon.
Koraidon, my friend, are you going to be waking up here? Are you going to be staying asleep? There will be the wake. This could be what Gio needs. The big Flare Blitz in the sun. It all came down to that. Just when the back was against the wall, Gio, the master of suspense, whips things around and claims Game 1.
Luck has finally gotten to Gio's side and sneaks away with Game 1. Just 1 more win and he can finally take a break for the day. Game 2 starts the exact same as Game 1. Gio's Koraidon Chiyu versus Hirofumi's Smeargle and Koraidon. Hirofumi double protects, and Gio locks into Heat Wave and tries to close combat the Koraidon. Moody procs and no important stats were raised or dropped. Turn 2, Gio makes the same play as turn 1. Smeargle has not followed me this set yet, and he could get rid of Hirofumi's Koraidon. His own Koraidon will be in an outstanding position. Hirofumi finally clicks out Follow Me, and Smeargle once again dodges a 90% accurate move from Gio, this time being the Heat Wave, and because of that, the Smeargle stays alive at 1 HP. Hirofumi's Koraidon, thanks to Gio lowering his own defenses, is able to KO Gios Koraidon with a low kick, and to make a bad turn even worse for Gio, the Smeargle gets the speed boost from Moody again. Hirofumi is pumped. He's got the fastest Spore user in the West, and the most important Mon on Gio's side is down. Gio sends in his only Spore immune Pokemon being Brute Bonnet, and his plan is to Sucker Punch the Smeargle to try and catch it when it attempts to ruinate, while Gio keeps clicking that Heat Wave. This is a big risk that Gio is taking. If Hirofumi just makes the call that Brute Bonnet doesn't Rage Powder, then Gio can be put to sleep. And of course, Gio continues to not tear his Brute Bonnet in front of Koraidon. Hirofumi switches Koraidon for Incineroar in Smeargle's Spiky Shields. Heat Wave does around a third to Incineroar, but the most important thing about this turn is that the Moody drops Smeargle's speed DAC down one stage. Gio is faster again than Smeargle. But Gio is not out of the Sport Gambit yet. Fake Out can cause the Chiyu to flinch, and that could give Hirofumi a chance to land a huge Spore, if Gio doesn't Rage Powder. But if he does Rage Powder, the Incineroar might rip a Sun Boosted Flare Blitz into the Brute Bonnet, and Terra isn't safe either because then none of your Mons are safe from Spore. Gio calls this time that there will be a Spore, and Rage Powders and Heat Waves, and Gio gets it right. Fake Out does a bit extra thanks to a crit on the Chiyu, and the Smeargle is stuck sporing the Immune Mushroom. Gio doesn't need the Brute Bonnet on the field anymore, as a Heat Wave will be able to finish off the 1 HP Smeargle. So he switches into Lunala so he can threaten big Meteor Beam damage on the Incineroar and start setting up. But Hirofumi makes a great call here, spiky shielding and clicking knockoff into Chiyu, losing the Choice Scarf, which means the +1 speed boosted Smeargle outspeeds the Chiyu, and Chiyu misses another Heat Wave, this time on the Incineroar as the harsh sunlight expires. He also guessed correctly which slot Hirofumi is going to Spore and switch in the Brute Bonnet on that slot. And thanks to Lunala, Super Bonnet will replacing the Lunala this turn, as the Chiyu, you guessed it, clicks Heat Wave. Gio gets this right again, and the Heat Wave finally knocks out the Smeargle and chips Incineroar to half. The Chiyu gets weakened with Parting Shot, and in comes the Ice Horse, and Incineroar who takes the dead Smeargle spot. It is finally Gio's turn to be the one sporing. Gio puts the Calyrex Ice that turns into a Fairy type asleep, and Chiyu continues chipping things down with Heat Waves and survives a weakened knockoff from Incineroar because Chiyu already lost its item, and the Calyrex Ice from Hirofumi takes its first turn to sleep. A silver lining on the Chiyu losing the Choice Scarf is that it can now switch moves against Mon that it already outspeeds without needing the winter clothing. Gio doubles into Incineroar with Seed Bomb and Overheat, and finally tears his Brute Bonnet to water. The double up barely knocks out the Incineroar, but not before the Incineroar can knock out the Chiyu, and the Calyrex Ice from Hirofumi wakes up after one turn and clicks Trick Room. Yes, this does make the Calyrex Ice move first in the Trick Room turns, but it more importantly makes Hirofumi's Koraidon move last in the turn order. Hirofumi's win condition right now is stalling out with Leech Seed. The Calyrex's speed stat plays almost no factor into that game plan, but the Koraidon going last can very easily stop Hirofumi from getting a big hit off with it. A massive mistake from Hirofumi. Gio puts the Koraidon to sleep and hits the Calyrex Ice with a power or boosted Meteor Beam to take the Calyrex Ice to around half. Hirofumi gets his first Leech Seed on Lunala, and combining Leech Seed and Leftovers healing, Hirofumi is healing around 18% a turn passively. Gio knocks out the Koraidon with Moongeist Beam and launches a Spore into the Calyrex Ice, who protects. Calyrex Ice does a bit more passive damage and heals back up to around 85% with Leech Seed and Leftovers. Gio's up 2 versus 1, but Hirofumi just might be able to outlast both these Mons with all the passive damage and healing. Hirofumi's Calyrex Ice clicks Leech Seed and misses Brute Bonnet, and Brute Bonnet puts it to sleep. A Seed Bomb and a critical hit Moongeist Beam for good measure knocks out the Calyrex Ice, and now Gio has made it to Grand Finals in the biggest tournament of the year. And that raises the question, who does Gio get the privilege of playing tomorrow for the chance to become World Champion? Well,
been one of the top trainers that we've had in the North America region for a long time, and with such a strong, convincing series, 2-0, and it's going to be here Championship Sunday. Let's see if he can earn himself getting
Fire at full HP. Brady's just gonna throw in the towel.
He knows with the Raging Bull gone, the chance is gone as well, and with that, James Evan declaims victory here in the finals of Vancouver, becoming regional. Not through here, look how little damage that does. It's not going to be very effective, and Crowder does not get flinched. The Fire Punch comes through, and Landorus will get knocked out.
By
shot here. Hits into that Amoonguss spot. Both players shake hands as Amoonguss gets hit. Amoonguss gets KO'd, and James Evans is the 2018 Pokemon Video Game World Champion.
US's James Evans is a titan and competitive Pokemon, and that's not up for debate. He has been winning tournaments since 2017, starting the seniors division, and the scary thing is that each year James only seems to be getting better. James Evans is running the restricted duo Koraidon and Calyrex Shadow. Remember, this was the restricted combination to hand Gio his only loss of the tournament. James also has an infinitely disruptive Incineroar, a Brubonnet where Gio's only Spore Immune Pokemon is his own Brubonnet, Raging Bolt for a bulky special attacker that also has priority move, and Landorus Incarnate, a self-sufficient special attacker that does damage comparable to restricteds. This isn't the first time these trainers have faced each other. In the 2025 Vancouver Regionals, where Gio had his first big run of the year, Gio actually eliminated James Evans from that tournament, but that was then. It's a different rule set with elevated stakes. Can Gio pull it off a second time? Gio's job today isn't totally finished. Well, him playing the high stakes Pokemon part is, but Gio has to do some stuff with the media. He's got to answer some questions about the top 4 match he just played, he needs to get pictures and videos of him taken for tomorrow, and he needs to do another interview for the upcoming match tomorrow. Finally, both Gio and James are free. Gio and James and all of their friends go together and get dinner together and eventually ice cream, with James and Gio sitting across from each other to quote-unquote build tension. This doesn't work because both of these two are buds and are way too nice of people for any strain to occur. Gio finally gets back to his hotel at around midnight. It's finally time for Gio to start preparing for the biggest match of his life with his friends. He spends 4 hours and stays awake till 5 AM watching his friends try any and all lines on both sides of the matchup. And when he wakes up, he spends another 2.5 hours of him actually playing the match himself, so he feels comfortable clicking the buttons when it's finally time to play. But out of the 6.5 total hours Gio spent preparing, 4 of those hours were spent on one lead combination from James in particular, Koraidon Assault Vest Raging Bolt. Koraidon from either side can run away with the game if either gets a Flame Charge speed boost. Koraidon is such an offensively powerful mon that Koraidon can one-shot almost any mon besides maybe another Koraidon and a Brubonnet that Terras. And an Assault Vest Raging Bolt with a Photosynthesis special attack boost could finish off soften up mons before they can move with Thunderclap, or whittle things down for the other fast mons like a Calyrex Shadow, or for a Brubonnet Sucker Punch in the endgame to finish things off. Raging Bolt also resists some of the most common attacks Gio wants to use, like Heat Wave, Flame Charge, and Flare Blitz. Gio wants a lead where he is the one forcing James to respond, not the other way around, and Gio's best bet is to put as much overwhelming offensive pressure as possible. Garf Chi-Yu and Fluttermane are both faster than anything James can use. Something like a Moonblast with Beads of Ruin and Heat Wave is something none of James's mons are too happy to see. These two also have the extra benefit of being able to take advantage of the sun of James leads with Koraidon, with the Photosynthesis speed boost with Fluttermane and the 50% damage increase from Chi-Yu's fire type attacks. But if James wants to benefit from the sun, Gio lead makes sure that James has to set up the sun himself, not get away with Gio doing it for him. Gio is ready. Well, at least as ready as he can be. In Day 1 and Day 2, there are separate streams for each game. So there's a Pokemon Unite stream, a Pokemon Go stream, a Pokemon TCG stream, and of course a Pokemon VGC stream. But on Day 3, it is one stream and on one stage. All the eyes will be on one match and nothing else. But Gio and James have to wait. They have to wait for Pokemon Unite to finish, then for Pokemon Go to finish, and then you have to wait for all 3 divisions of the Pokemon TCG to finish. And then of course, the juniors and seniors have to get their time in the spotlight in the VGC. After 9.5 hours of streaming, it is finally almost time for these players to play the biggest match of their lives. But first, they have to make their grand entrances. James is up first. Music is blaring. Smoke and sparkles everywhere. Colors and spotlights wherever you go. It really is the Super Bowl of Pokemon. James gets a feel for all the sparkles flaring around for a few seconds on the walkway, but it transitions to acting like being the finals of the Pokemon World Championship is another Tuesday for him. And to be fair for him, it kind of is. Next is Gio. A cartoonishly large smile is on his face as he waves and points to the crowd. He is having the time of his life. Next, just a quick question for how these players feel. James talks about the honor and privilege it is to be in the contention to be a 2-time world champion. And Gio briefly mentions how surreal all of this is, who immediately shouts out to his friends and loved ones that supported him throughout his journey. Kian and Kareem, Gio and James's friends respectively, are asked some questions about the finals. They both say how much their friend prepared for the match and how confident in their ability to win. But that's enough of the theatrics. It's time to play some Pokemon. Game 1, Gio leads with the classic pair of Flutter Mane and Chiyu, and James leads with the defensive Incineroar and Bluebonnet. Gio is not ready for this lead at all. Gio is so scared of Raging Bolt that these two weren't even consideration. That doesn't mean Gio's in a bad spot though. A fake out from James into Chiyu seems really safe here as the Chiyu can't protect. Unless Gio Terra goes as Chiyu. Gio could go for this, but now is not the right time. Gio has shown to be very patient when using his Terra time and time again, and he will continue to do so. An early Terra Ghost doesn't even get you that much mileage, and Terra Ghost then makes you weak against Incineroar Knockoff and a Calyrex Shadow Astral Barrage. Gio accepts getting his Chiyu faked out and spored, and launches a Moonblast into Bluebonnet, which was forced to Terra on turn 1 because James has 0 Moonblast switch-ins. And even after Terra, it still does over half thanks to the Beats of Ruin. The next Moonblast in Bluebonnet will knock it out, but James can Sucker Punch the Flutter Mane to break its Sash, which will likely be important later. That Sash is just too important to lose, and James' Bluebonnet isn't even threatening right now. Gio's Flutter Mane switches out for his own Bluebonnet and lets Chiyu take its first turn of sleep. With no Flare Blitz on James' Incineroar, Gio's Bluebonnet feels even safer than usual. James' Sucker Punch fails, and James knocks off Chiyu's Choice Scarf. Gio has now positioned himself to guarantee a Spore on something, but for everyone except Gio, Bluebonnet showing up is kind of a shock. Gio has now revealed 3 of his 4 Mons already, and none of them have been his 2 restricted. Gio has left either his Koraidon or Lunala behind. James' Bluebonnet is not doing anything, so Gio clicks Spore on the Incineroar slot and sees if his Chiyu can wake up after its 1 turn of sleep. It's still nap time for the fish. But James is kind of left floundering here. He doesn't want any of his more offensive Mons getting spored, so he's forced to leave his slower Mons out there not doing really anything. James knocks off Gio's Bluebonnet for pitiful damage, and Bluebonnet fails to spore the already sleeping Chiyu, while James' Incineroar is put to sleep. James' Bluebonnet will surely not spore in the Spore Immune slot, so it's time for Gio to start preparing to set up. Out goes his Bluebonnet and in goes his Koraidon, and Chiyu gets his second crack at waking up. No dice again. James does a bit more chip with Sucker Punch into Chiyu, and he allows Incineroar to take his first turn of sleep. A close combat from Koraidon will surely knock out James' Incineroar, but that leaves a problem. A defense drop and a recoil from Rocky Helmet and Life Orb will put himself in range of Astral Barrage that will probably outspeed him. Gio needs the speed boost from Flame Charge badly. A Sucker Punch for Bluebonnet has shown to barely not be able to KO Chiyu in this range. Gio can Dark Pulse into Bluebonnet with his Chiyu, who's guaranteed to wake up this turn for a likely KO, and set up by Flame Charging into the Incineroar for the end game. It's quite simply the perfect play. The turn starts and Incineroar moves first, and it wakes up to click Helping Hand. All of a sudden, Chiyu gets hit by an attack 50% stronger than anyone expected and is barely knocked out by a boosted Sucker Punch. And Gio's Flame Charge does around 20% to James' Incineroar, and Gio takes a lot of recoil. James knew when and how to play it for his out and got rewarded with a 1-3 wake up and a knockout. Gio senses Bluebonnet again. We talked about how safe it is to click Spore against James, who's teared his own Bluebonnet away from grass. Gio is much more scared of the Spore pressure James' Bluebonnet has over anything that James' Incineroar can do. So close combat into Bluebonnet that can't protect is the obvious play here, and clicking Spore in the other slot is free because there's no protect and no Spore immunities to switch into. James' Calyrex Shadow comes in and laughs at Gio's close combat, and James is parting shots with the Incineroar to come back in and take the Spore. James is violently pumping his fist, knowing he schooled Gio 2 turns in a row. Another disaster for Gio, but at least he spored that pesky Bluebonnet. But now Incineroar can come back in at any time and start neutering Gio's firepower. Gio at this stage of the game, where close combat into James' Bluebonnet is a guaranteed knockdown or something, and that's an offer he can't refuse. And if anything that can be spored by the end of Gio's turn, Bluebonnet will do just that. Gio rips a Terra into his Koraidon, and down goes Bluebonnet as James' Calyrex Shadow protects itself from Spore. James reveals his final Pokemon, surprising nobody, being his own Koraidon. This Terra from Gio, he admits his mistake. It doesn't help him live anything defensively, and he clicked close combat, so he doesn't need a Terra boost from Terra Fire either. This turn can go a million different ways. A Sucker Punch and Flame Charge into Calyrex Shadow that just protected will knock out the Calyrex, but James can swap out that Calyrex slot for Incineroar, nerf Koraidon's attack, and eat any move Gio Koraidon does easily. You could of course try to close combat this switch in, but what if the Calyrex stays in and you just punch that air? You can go after James' Koraidon, but then you're opening to get blown up by Astral Barrage, and what if the Koraidon protects? What should Gio do? What would you do? Gio decides that none of these plays are good enough. Gio switches out his Koraidon and sacrifices that speed boost he worked so hard for. For the Flutter Mane, he made sure to keep its Focus Sash and try to sneak in a Sucker Punch in the Calyrex Shadow. But James is no sucker, and he switches in the Incineroar and knocks out the Brubani with Collision Course. Gio's down 2 versus 3, but this spot is not as bad as it looks. The Sun expires at the end of this turn, but thanks to Brubani's sacrifice, Gio is able to get the Sun back up, which makes his Flutter Mane the fastest mon on the field. Koraidon coming back in now also dodges Incineroar's Intimidate and cancels out the post-combat defense drops from earlier. A potential fake out from James does not make this free by any means. James can quite easily either land a fake out and knock out Gio's Koraidon, or call out Gio trying to stall out the fake out pressure and pivot back into Shadow Rider again, which can bomb the whole field with the Astral Barrage. Gio has officially had enough with all this pivoting James is doing that it's making him look like a fool. He's going to ignore fake out pressure and swing for the fences. James's Incineroar switches out, and you can see the little smile from Gio knowing that he finally got James. A Moonblast into the Koraidon OHKOs it, and a Flame Charge from Gio's Koraidon brings Calyrex down to 1 HP and gives Koraidon the speed boost. James cannot win the game from here, and Game 1 goes to Gio. Just one more game, and he will finally have done it. Game 2, the leads are the same on both sides. Gio's game plan also stays the same. Throw everything you can to take out that Brubani. It's a safe thing to target, and it can Spore, which has caused so many problems for Gio already. James changes things up a bit though. A Sucker Punch goes right into the Flutter Mane, taking it to 1/3 HP. And instead of clicking Fake Out on the Chiyu, he clicks Knockoff. A Dark Pulse from Chiyu and a Moonblast from Flutter Mane is more than enough to grab a KO for Gio on turn 1. But this isn't without a cost. Gio has lost his Focus Sash on Flutter Mane, and the next attack that hits it will surely KO it. And losing Scarf on Chiyu means that Chiyu no longer outspeeds Calyrex Shadow. Gio was able to win Game 1 by making James's Calyrex Shadow a liability, but James is actively making plays early so that doesn't happen later. And speaking of Calyrex, that's exactly what James sends out now. Gio's 2 monsters commonly faster than Calyrex Shadow are now slower. Remember, Gio's Chiyu lost his Choice Scarf, and Flutter Mane doesn't have the speed boost right now because the sun isn't up. Flutter Mane has to get out of there. One Astral Barrage, and it's done. Luckily, Trusty Brubani is the perfect mon to send out the potential Astral Barrages. Gio's Chiyu can now switch move thanks to no longer having Choice Scarf. Snarl being quad super effective will still be more than enough damage to make sure the next attack KOs Calyrex and lower its damage output. James protects the Calyrex that he cannot lose the Focus Sash under any circumstance, and parting shots to Chiyu after it takes a little bit chip from Snarl, and James sends into the Koraidon. James's Koraidon can OHKO either of Gio's mons if there's no Terra. Chiyu's usefulness without a Choice Scarf has expired, so Gio has no problem letting that faint. Gio, expecting Koraidon to attack the Brubani, logically goes for Terra Water. Without a double protect, Gio is guaranteed to Spore something in Calyrex's slot. He could go for a Sucker Punch, but there is zero way James allows his Gio to take his Calyrex down to 1 HP that easily and have the Flutter Mane in the back just to clean it up later. The turn starts with James Terra firing his Koraidon to boost his damage output, and Gio Terra watering his Brubani. And then James goes for Astral Barrage. James actually had the balls to go for it, and thanks to no longer being Dark type, Brubani takes a ton of damage, and not only that, James finishes off Gio's Chiyu with a Flame Charge, giving himself a speed boost. The best Gio can do against Koraidon in speed tiers is win a speed tie with Flutter Mane. Brubani puts the Calyrex to sleep. It's 3 versus 3. Gio's Koraidon is out next. James' Koraidon is a bit bulkier than Gio's, so even a Life Orb close combat will not OHKO James' Koraidon. But James' Koraidon also cannot KO Giovanni's Koraidon either. Gio will need at least 2 attacks to knock out James' Koraidon. A small benefit of Koraidon being slower is that if Gio lands a close combat into something, then the defense drops won't matter for this turn because all of the opponent's mons have already attacked. Gio's going to try to use that to his advantage. He's going to try to win worlds right here, right now. Gio is betting on James switching his sleeping Calyrex in for an Incineroar. Remember, Gio won Game 1 by making a similar hard read on a switch. Gio locks his close combat to Calyrex Shadow and Spores in the Koraidon slot, and the Calyrex doesn't move an inch. James's Koraidon protects. James has gone away with burning his first turn of sleep with Calyrex Shadow and lost nothing in return. Gio at least knows that Spore into the Koraidon is safe this turn, but now James's Calyrex can wake up any turn now. If James gets that 1 in 3, that could be disastrous. Like we said earlier, neither Koraidon can one-hit KO each other, and James's Koraidon has the speed boost. Gio needs a speed boost of his own against James's Koraidon, the Calyrex Shadow. Calyrex stays asleep, and James's Koraidon takes Gio's Koraidon to a quarter HP, while Gio's Koraidon breaks James's Focus Sash with Flame Charge, getting the speed boost, and Gio puts James's Koraidon to sleep. James's Koraidon is now at coin flip odds of waking up this turn, and if he doesn't wake up this turn, it is guaranteed next turn. Gio also needs to start damaging this Koraidon as well. It's still at full, and thanks to James running collision course instead of close combat, its defenses are still at normal. Gio is once again calling a switch of some sort here. If Incineroar switches into the Koraidon slot, it will get KO'd by close combat. If Incineroar switches into the Calyrex slot, the Brabana will be able to Spore it. This is pretty risky. If Calyrex wakes up in Astral Barrages, that would KO both of Gio's Pokemon, and all Gio would have left is Flutter Mane in the Sun that expires this turn. There are no switches, and James's Calyrex wakes up this time and protects, fearing something like a Sucker Punch or an attack from Koraidon that would knock it out before it gets to move. Gio's close combat expectively does not KO the opposing Koraidon, as Spore gets blocked by Protect. It's a 3 vs 3 and all the mons on the field are in danger of dying to the next clean hit that lands on them. The pressure cannot be higher, but Gio can smell blood. This Koraidon that's asleep will feint the next attack from his own Koraidon, and a Sucker Punch in the Calyrex Shadow that just protected will catch James if he swings. All that needs to happen is for either James to click Astral Barrage in the Calyrex Shadow, or for James's Koraidon to not get the 1 and 3 to wake up this turn and click exactly Protect, and Gio will become the world champion. The turn starts, and James makes the correct call. The Calyrex Shadow switches to dodge Sucker Punch, but that's still okay if that Koraidon doesn't get the 1 and 3. James's Koraidon decided its power nap is over and throws that shield up to protect itself and taunt Gio. And a critical heads-up play once again from one of the best players in the world, and a bit of luck keeps James in this battle. James now has a free fake out into the Brabana that does not have Protect. But just because the fake out into Brabana is guaranteed doesn't mean James will actually click fake out here. If Gio doesn't protect his Koraidon, a fake out into and a double up would be a game-losing play for Gio. Plays it safe, protecting his Koraidon and attempts to land a hit on something with Brabana. A fake out into Brabana from James stops it completely, and a frame charge into Gio's Koraidon gets blocked. Fake out has successfully been stalled with basically no consequences. These Koraidons that can both easily knock each other out is so stressful. What makes it worse is that if either trainer clicks Flare Blitz, they'll knock themselves out with the recoil, and Gio's Koraidon just protected, so he does the unthinkable. He forfeits having the speed advantage his Koraidon would have had against the Calyrex Shadow, by switching it in for Flutter Mane that gets knocked out from a knockoff from Incineroar. James's Koraidon protects for the turn, and Gio puts Incineroar to sleep. Gio sets the Sun back up, giving his Brabana a defense boost. He's banking it on these two to win a 2 vs 3. The defense boost allows Brabana to take any physical attack with ease and become a crucial redirection bot. Gio can safely Rage Powder here, and a Flame Charge can KO the Koraidon that just protected, and Gio's Koraidon will have speed control for the rest of the game. James goes for the double Protect. No dice for James. Gio knocks out James's Koraidon, and Incineroar takes its first turn of sleep. Gio with his Koraidon Brabana can now just Rage Powder and keep targeting the Calyrex until it gets knocked out, and Koraidon can OHKO the Incineroar with close combat. The casters Air and Cybertron Zhang, longtime competitor and commentator, and Rosemary Kelly, fantastic commentary in many games, think that this game is effectively over.
You can target that Calyrex slot down. You could just go for something like Sucker Punch in close combat, and I think we're about to crown a brand new world champion.
Feels super safe.
But they're forgetting something here. Gio's Koraidon has taken a lot of damages from James' Koraidon and self-damage from Life Orb Chip. After that Flame Charge corrected, Gio's Koraidon will actually feint the next attack that lands. If he KOs the Calyrex, the Rocky Helmet Incineroar always wins the 1v1 against the Intimidate Brabana that only has resisted attacks. But if he KOs the Incineroar, shouldn't Gios Brabana be able to win with a priority Sucker Punch, or at least be favored in that mind game? Against most Calyrexes, that would be correct, but not James's. James's Calyrex has Encore, and James can Encore the Brabana right now into Rage Powder. And since Astral Barrage would be stronger thanks to there only being one opponent, and Astral Barrage will be able to KO the Brabana from half. Gio protects his Koraidon, hoping that somehow James makes a mistake and can Spore into Calyrex so Brabana can win the 1v1. But James, the savvy veteran he is, spots a play in Brabana's stuck clicking move that does nothing. Gio Koraidon trades with Incineroar, and that Calyrex Shadow KOs Brabana with Astral Barrage. Gio was so close for so long, but just could not get the knockout punch needed to seal Worlds. He has no choice to play one more game. In this game, the winner takes all. The same lead once again from both sides. These trainers have had 24 hours to consider everything for this one set, and they are confident this is the best they got. Gio was able to get a KO on the Brute Bonnet on turn 1 with a Moonblast from Fluttermane, but he sacrificed both his Chiyu, Choice Scarf, and Sash on his Fluttermane, making the Calyrex Shadow a much bigger problem long term. Gio doesn't want any of those things to be sacrificed. A Chiyu switch into Brute Bonnet is super safe. It takes almost nothing from Knockoff, Seed Bomb, and is immune to a potential Spore from James's Brute Bonnet. And the Fluttermane will protect here, not wanting to get Sucker Punch. Gio's Brute Bonnet takes a smidge from Fake Out, and a Sucker Punch from James's Brute Bonnet fails. Chiyu's Scarf and Fluttermane's Focus Sash are now safe, but Gio has a different problem now. Since Fluttermane just protected and Gio sent out his Brute Bonnet, the only Spore immune Pokemon, James can Spore the Fluttermane spot without a fear of immunity. Now, Gio could Moonblast Brute Bonnet like he did last game, but that only would OHKO with a Beads of Ruin. Gio's going to be just shorter on a knockout, but Gio has one more trick up his sleeve. Gio's Fluttermane is Terra Stellar. Terra Stellar is thought to be mostly a joke. What Terra Stellar does is that your defensive typing stays the same, but the first time you use a move of unique type, it is 33% stronger if it is a stab move, and increases it by 20% if it's not a stab move. The reason why it was thought to be a joke is that Terra typing into a type you already are gives you a damage multiplier that doesn't go away after the first use, and Terraing into a type you're not gives you a different defensive properties and a new same type attack bonus. But in this instance, Terra Stellar is just the boost Gio needs. Gio Terra Stellars, and James doesn't Terra or switch his Brute Bonnet, as he knows he can live Moonblast, but he's not ready for a Terra Moonblast at all. The Moonblast gets an OHKO, and Brute Bonnet puts Incineroar to sleep after it takes a knockoff. This turn could not have gone any better for Gio. He's up a Mon, his Mons are all still really healthy, and he put him on to sleep. This game is not close to over though. James sends his Koraidon, setting up the Sun and giving Gio's Fluttermane a speed boost, and his Brute Bonnet a defense boost. But since Gio just uses Terra on Fluttermane, Brute Bonnet is in a lot of trouble here. James's Koraidon is going to be forced to Terra at some point. It cannot stay 4 times weak to Fairy with a Fluttermane that's faster on the field, in that the Fluttermane is so healthy. James would also really like a speed boost at some point, so he can maybe win the speed tie against the Fluttermane, or be able to outspeed Gio's Koraidon and outspeed Gio's Choice Scarf Chiyu. James can't KO both Gio's Brute Bonnet and get a speed boost. Flame Charge simply won't be enough damage here. So Gio does a play that covers as many things as possible. The Moonblast into the Sleeping Incineroar either does a good chunk to Incineroar or a good chunk into the Calyrex, which the Fluttermane outspeeds. If James Koraidon protects, that's fine. That means James has made 0 progress on eliminating Gio's Pokemon. If James Flame Charges, a Spore from Bonnet will put the Koraidon out of commission and be a sitting duck. And if James Collision Courses into Bonnet, Gio can send in his Choice Scarf Chiyu in the Sun next to his Terra Stellar Fluttermane to put on an insane amount of offensive pressure. James's Incineroar takes its first turn of sleep, and a Moonblast does just less than half to the Incineroar. James's Koraidon Collision Courses to Bonnet with a critical and on top of that to disregard any questions on if the Bonnet had a chance of living. Here comes Gio's Chiyu. Gio has a big choice to make. Gio could choose to either finish off the Sleeping Incineroar or double it to the Koraidon that can protect. Doubling the Koraidon is safer because the Incineroar only has a 1/3 chance to wake up this turn. But if it does wake up, James can knock off the Choice Scarf from the Chiyu, and now the Chiyu won't be so scary to the Koraidon anymore. If Gio doubles the Incineroar and James doesn't protect, James could break Focus Sash on Fluttermane and get a speed boost, and things can flip on their head. Gio decides to play it safe, go for the odds, and James calls out the safer play with a protect. Gio's Chiyu Heat Waves, which takes Incineroar to around 20%. Gio needs his Incineroar to stay asleep, and just like your average cat, it has no interest in waking up. This is it for Gio. There are no more decisions for him to make. Shadow Ball into Koraidon and Heat Wave is the only play here. If Gio lands and connects these Heat Waves, Gio has become World Champion. The Gio's Fluttermane moves, and Shadow Ball once again thinks that boost from Terra Stellar puts Koraidon under 1/3 HP. Next is Heat Wave. The Chiyu's up next.
The Chiyu goes for the Heat Wave to try to finish it off! A double KO! And Gio is 1 Pokemon away from becoming the World Champion!
Gio connected the biggest Heat Wave of his life, grabbing the double KO. Gio has done it. James's Calyrex cannot win a 1v3. The Calyrex falls next turn, and it's over. Gio is World Champion. Gio has gone from someone who has no medal of any sort to the winner of the biggest and most prestigious tournament. Gio gives his opponent and friend James Evan a hug and takes it all in. Sparklers surround him. Over 5,000 people screaming for him. His hands are on his head. That's a man who is overwhelmed with emotion. Gio was asked on stage, what advice do you have for people who want to put in the kind of work that you put in? Gio says, trust yourself. If you want to pursue something, go for it wholeheartedly. Gio has to do one more walk down the alley for his trophy ceremony where he is saved for last. And you can tell he is still in shock that he is the world champion. He keeps instinctively moving his hands to his head and mouth in complete shock, and he keeps shaking his head no, probably without even realizing it. He receives his trophy as the crowd roars one last time for all the champions and the runners-up. And just as quickly as World has started, it is now over. Well, what's next for Gio? The same as always. He's still hungry for more. He's still out there competing, getting strong results and still chasing his first medal. And as Champions has come out around 2 weeks ago as I'm writing this piece on April 21st, 2026, Gio has been trading the top spot in the in-game ladder. It's a new game, but I expect Gio to not slow down one bit. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to take a chance on a nearly 2-hour-long video from a guy who has less than 50 subscribers. I started working on this on December 22nd, 2025, and worked on it every day since. Am I gonna make another project like this? I don't know. But what I can say is that I'm proud of what I was able to create as a one-man army who's probably making zero money off of this. I hope this was worth your time, and be great out there. Bye-bye.